PixeLobby podcast. I am your host, Brian Mundy, and I want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for listening, tuning in, and subscribing to our show. We have a great one for you today. I also want to introduce founder of the PixeLobby, my co-host, Cindy Wilkerson. Cindy.
Hey everybody, I'm so glad to have you all with us today.
Great. Also today, joining us on the panel, the very talented, the man of the hour, a surfer, what are you, an editor, a graphic artist. He does it all. We have Ed Ward with us. Ed.
Hey, thanks for involving me.
You got it. And our special guest today, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. We spare no expense. We flew her all the way in through Google Hangouts. And we have Morgana Creely. Morgana, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi from Australia. Okay, a bit about me. I share my studio with my fabulous husband Martin and 3 very spoiled cats. I've been shooting approximately 8 years. I like to create images that tell stories. I'm a hoarder, as you can see behind me slightly. And I'm just really interested in anything quirky and unusual out there, kind of something unusual.
Excellent, excellent. So Morgana is also a member and one of the featured artists on the PixeLobby website. You'll also see her posting and contributing and being part of the PixeLobby on Facebook. And primarily, in looking through your work, Morgana, I've noticed it's a lot, as you say, telling stories, but you could probably categorize it as a lot of portraiture. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely alternative portraiture. When people first ask me, what do I shoot, I say, no weddings, no babies, no happy families. I'm trying to tell my stories, but I'm looking for the unusual, I'm looking for the quirky. But yes, it is predominantly portraits, usually live people, but sometimes I use my dead friends behind me, which are really handy if I have an idea at sort of 12:30 at night and my husband really doesn't want to get in front of the camera yet again, although he's usually pretty good. But yes, I'm telling stories through people. The occasional landscape, but no, it's mostly portraiture.
Now you had mentioned that you're looking for it. So when you're looking, what is the process for your looking when you are looking for a project? What is the process that you go through?
It's a bit random. Either I will see something and think, oh wow, look, I've got this mouse. Where would I not expect to see this mouse? You know, well, in a kitchen cupboard that might be a bit boring, but oh look, maybe I could put my mouse in my sewing kit and have him living in all my cotton, and then I kind of start to brainstorm and freeform. Or the other way it happens is sometimes, how can I put this? I had a student say to me once when I was talking about how to generate ideas for storytelling, she said, yes, Morgana, but we don't have a crazy brain like you. And that pretty much just describes me. You know, you hear the stereotypical, ooh, shiny, and that's pretty much me. And I'm constantly looking around me and thinking, how can I take something and put it in such a really unexpected way? What kind of a story would that tell? My favorite quote is, what does that look like? You know, maybe, you know, I say, okay, there's a fabulous surfboard behind Ed on his wall. What if I put that in my hallway and I had someone surfing down the hallway and I could add smoke and, you know, what would that look like? So it's taking something that's everyday and putting it into an unusual situation. But a lot of the time I'm constantly feeding my brain. I'm watching television and I'm watching movies and I'm looking around me. I'm constantly looking for locations. I'm a really big believer in you've got to put in the visual stimulus to get the brain to come up with something so that you can have the output.
You have a very...
it makes me wonder what your childhood was like to bring you to this, where you're, you know, what inspired you through your life to be the type of thinker you are. You know, it makes me want to get you more, to know you more. Am I making sense?
Yeah. I don't, it's the whole nature nurture thing. I was just always the kid that was why. We have to go home now, why? And it was just why? I'm sure I drove my parents absolutely mad. I was also a massive reader. We were really heavily encouraged to read. We wanted to watch TV. No, you go and read a book for half an hour and then you can watch TV, which I actually think is a really sensible idea. But I'm just, some people are a little fairly straight and mainstream and some people are just a little off kilter. And I think I'm just one of those people that's just a little off kilter. I was always into the horror movies. I was always into the alternative stuff. And why? What does that look like? Fortunately, I have an incredibly educated husband so that when I can go, why? He can actually tell me and it doesn't drive him nuts.
So is there a pretty big, I don't know what you would call it, not alternative, but type of scene in your area where you can attract the type of people that you find interesting enough to shoot that aren't necessarily models, or even if they are?
When I first started shooting portraits, I was just shooting my friends. So I was shooting pretty mainstream people because even though I'm definitely not normal, most of my friends are pretty normal. But then as I started to shoot models and I started to meet more people, and my husband's very involved in shooting motorcycles, so I'm starting to get to know more of the people that ride bikes, and I'm starting to sort of expand the people that I know. I just seem to attract interesting people. So I know a lot of people in the rockabilly scene. I know a lot of people in the retro scene. I used to know a lot of people in the goth scene. And it's just, I guess, word of mouth. I'll shoot my friend Sam, who's a gorgeous pin-up model, and then she'll know someone that says, hey, Morgana's looking for someone who's a bit different. But I do tend to attract people who are a little different, because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for quirky and intelligent.
That's much more interesting, isn't it?
I have a lot of trouble. Sorry?
So it's much more interesting, isn't it?
Well, there's so many models in the mainstream today, and I'm sure they're lovely people, but they have dead eyes. And I want the intelligence in the eye. So I really don't care what you look like, as long as you're clean and tidy and respectable in my space. But if you're quirky and you've got the intelligence in the eyes, and I can see there's something going on behind those eyes, I want to shoot you. You could be the best looking model in the world, but if you're dead in the eyes, I'm so not interested.
It's really interesting because when I watch you, and we're good friends and we visit all the time, but I noticed that you don't just work in the studio, but you also are always building on in such a way that you can add to your work in the studio. And I mean that by your recent project of creating hats and how you shop for your products. You don't just go to the main store or Amazon and find stuff at Amazon. How do you go about finding? Will you explain it to the audience how you go about finding your costumes or your dummies or your product for your shoots, because they are unique. It's not just what you see every day.
When you start getting into photography, you get to a stage where you are looking at everything all the time through a photographer's eye. And I make jokes about this. You could be watching a movie. I watched a movie with my husband the other day, and we got to the climax of the movie, of the big plot twist, and my husband and I are both sitting there going, oh my God, that light is so amazing. So when you're a photographer, you do get to a stage when you're constantly thinking about everything in terms of taking photos. With my props and my costumes, I've developed a very similar thing, whereas I'm always have something in the back of my mind. Is that a costume? Is that a prop? How can I use it? How can I use it? So everywhere I go, I'm looking. I do go to a lot of op shops. I go to a lot of second-hand stores. I go to a lot of second-hand auctions. But it's also thinking about how can I take something and turn it into something else. And just give me a minute. And no, I can't grab it. It's too far away. I've got a mask up in the corner that was just a basic paintball mask that I bought online that I went to my local secondhand store and they had some old wigs. So I found a fabulous wig, which I then glued onto the mask, and all of a sudden I've got something completely different and something completely unique. So it's always looking to see, okay, what's around me, what can I use, how can I use that, how can I adapt it, how can I change it, and how can I put it to something else and make it into something completely different. And the thing with a lot of my photography is too, my style tends to be half portraits from the waist up, looking at the camera or looking at the side. So you've got no idea what's going on behind my subject. Half of my costumes don't have backs on them. Because when I bought them, you know, they were dead, they've been so used, they were just, people were getting rid of them because they've been trashed. It's like, that's fine, you don't get to see the back of my model. You don't know that the dress is actually gaffer taped together, and I use gaffer tape a lot. But it's thinking about, how can I put this together, and what does that look like? It's that, I'll have that on my epitaph. What does that look like?
There you go.
Always looking for what's around me, what can I use? I mean, I'm looking at Cindy's background, I'm thinking, okay, I can see there's a whole lot of rolls of, I don't know, is it paper or fax paper or something behind you on the shelf? You know?
Yeah, I have.
He doesn't even know.
But you could take that and you could craft that into a headpiece just by using the front of all the rolls.
Yeah.
Well, you've really done stop thinking.
I got to find something interesting in my background then, I guess. Guitars?
I'm sure I could find something in your background.
That is what is so unique about you, and I'm sorry, I'll turn it over to you, but I just love how your brain works. It's just so exciting. But go ahead, Ed.
Well, I was just going to say, so the same way that you collect your props, you know, and they're always interchangeable, and you're doing different things to them. You do the same with shooting backgrounds that you might be able to use for them as well, and cataloging those too, right?
Yeah, I spent a period of 6 months a couple of years ago. I'm not a morning person, but every Friday morning my husband and I got up at 5 a.m. to get on the train at 6 o'clock to go into town really early, and we just walked around the Melbourne town just shooting backgrounds and going down every single laneway and everywhere we could go. I even had a map where I go, oh, we haven't gone down this laneway yet, let's see what's down here. And just shooting all the backgrounds that we could find. And everywhere I go, I'm looking at backgrounds. And I know people get caught up with gear sometimes, and they go, oh, you've got to have the right camera and you've got to have this and that. I challenge people to look at my composites and tell me which ones I shot the background on my iPhone. Because sometimes I'm out and about, oh my God, this is an amazing location, I have to shoot this. I don't have my camera. Shoot with my phone. No one's going to know because it's the background. And I'm sorry, I just have to say, Brian, if you look at the glass doors behind you with the nice frame, you could pin shapes on the glass and then light it from behind and get some really cool shadows. So yes, you do have an interesting background. But yes, I'm always looking at my backgrounds like I'm always looking at my props, like I'm always looking at everything through photography. It's a wonder I get anything else done, to tell you the truth. There's so much going on in my brain.
Do you find time to sleep?
I don't sleep enough. But I think the other thing people need to think about as well is just do it. You know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Do something else. But I think people tend to go, oh, but you've got all these props and you've got all these photos for composites on. You've just got all the stuff there. It's all too hard. It's not. Just start doing it. Sorry. That's my bug.
I think at this point we also need to mention that on the PixeLobby website, as well as this podcast, there will be links to all of Morgana's websites and Facebook pages, and you can take a look at her work, see this. We'll get into it a little bit later, but Morgana also has ebooks, she has classes, we have all these kind of things. Now, I would like to ask you to maybe take a step back, and how did this all start for you photography-wise? Did you just get a nice camera one day and say, oh, I'll start taking interesting pictures, or was this always a love and a passion from very early on?
No, it wasn't actually. While I've always been a very visual person, music has always been my thing. So I started playing piano when I was 10. I play guitar, I play Irish harp. Over the years I've tried a lot of different instruments, and I really didn't get into photography until after I met my husband, and we moved in together. bought the place we're living in, and we're renovating. I went, right, you know, I'm actually really good with budgets and with finance. And we said, I'll look after the budget, I'll organise all the tradesmen, and we get the place painted and fixed up and whatever. And I knew what my budget was. At that stage, Martin was shooting with his old film camera. He's a motorsports photographer. He does that on weekends. And I knew he wanted a digital camera, so I structured the budget so that when the house was finished renovating, I went, oh, look, we just happen to have enough money left over to buy you a new digital camera. So we went out and we bought him. At that stage, the new Canon camera was the 30D. And he kept saying to me, try it. I'm like, no, it's too hard. There's too many buttons. It's expensive. I'll break it. I have no idea what it's like. No, try it. So eventually I had the courage to try it. About a month later, I thought, you know what? I really should give him back his camera and go out and buy my own. Because I just loved it. This is this wonderful thing. Because I've done a little bit of photography when I was on holidays with film. But this wonderful digital thing where I can see instantly what I screwed up, because in the beginning I screwed up a lot. And slowly I started to get more and more into it. Martin, being the amazing husband that he is, one day came home with a pair of studio lights for me and went, you want studio lights? Here they are. And it sort of started from there. Now you can kind of see my background is red. That's the colour of my studio, is red. Because when we renovated, I didn't know I needed a studio, and I always wanted a red room. So people kind of walk into my studio and go, it's not white. It doesn't have to be white. But that's basically how I got into photography. The first couple of years I didn't know editing at all, because I didn't know how to use Photoshop. I didn't even know what Photoshop was. And then I was actually doing an online uni class, and we had to use Photoshop. And that was kind of the beginning of, oh, this is really interesting. That was Photoshop 7, I think, way back in the dark ages. And then slowly over time, I basically taught myself how to use Photoshop from online tutorials, YouTube, Glenn Dewar's tutorials, Calvin Hollywood tutorials, and just loved it so much that I just did it all the time, and it kind of ended up where I am today, where I have two very different styles. I either have my heavily retouched composite work, or every now and then I go back and just do a straight portrait, no background, very simple, because I kind of like that look too.
So speaking of Photoshop, I know from reading your book, maybe it's from reading your book or maybe it's just from conversations that we've had, I'm not sure, but that you are not a Lightroom advocate. You do everything in Photoshop, and any photographer that I know that shoots as much as you seems to just love Lightroom and its cataloging aspects. So I find that a little unusual.
I am a maverick because I don't use Lightroom at all, and I hate tablets. Sorry, Cindy. But yeah, I really like Adobe Bridge. I know that makes me a strange person. I also don't drink coffee. I'll just put that out there. But yeah, I just found that Bridge does everything that I need it to do. I played around a little bit with Lightroom, and I really was not that interested. Martin, my husband, never uses Photoshop because he's basically a photojournalist, so everything he needs is in Lightroom. But no, I just never saw the need to learn yet another program, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't criticize
Why
you
do you
because
like Lightroom
I do the
so
same.
much?
I don't. I'm with you. I still use Bridge and Photoshop.
You know, honestly, I've never used Bridge, ever. And so it actually intimidates me to learn it, which sounds really stupid because I taught myself all the others. So it's just another thing on the plate. And I don't see a need for Bridge because I use Lightroom now, but it took years before I ever used Lightroom. And I only use it for the same reasons others use Bridge. And so I think if you've got Bridge, I don't see the need, especially when you use Photoshop and the way you use it for Lightroom. But that's me. You know, what do you say, Morgana?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first trainings I did was the Calvin Hollywood tutorials, which I highly recommend. They're really, really good. He does a lot of his retouching, or a lot of his manipulation in Bridge before he even gets to Photoshop. And because I went through his training through his tutorials, then I learnt how to do a lot of adjustments in Bridge that I guess a lot of people are doing in Lightroom, so the curve adjustments and the colour casting and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily doing that in Photoshop. I'm doing that before I get to Photoshop, and I guess that's a lot of what you do in Lightroom. Yes, is that what you?
So basically, what I'll do is I will upload it, and it goes directly into Lightroom, and you get to see all the images there, and you can go through and get rid of the ones you don't want, and then you can do some retouching if you want. A lot of times I won't even do the retouching there because I do so much in Photoshop. I don't really use Lightroom for what the photographers like Lightroom for.
I use Lightroom for mainly what the camera raw processing. I will block an image in, and knowing that I'm not affecting the original, but just kind of block it in, make sure exposure, highlight, shadows, midtones, maybe some sharpening applied at that point in time, chromatic aberration, things like that. But
see, all of that can be done in ACR. And so for me, I'm like, well, if I'm going to open this section up, I don't want to keep redoing it. You know, I mean, it has its pluses and its minuses, is what I think.
It's not an either or. It's both.
Yeah.
The way I use the workflow, and I mean, to each his own. Once again, I think the Bridge workflow is a very valid workflow, and you know, let's face it, Adobe Lightroom came out because a lot of photographers were whining and griping and didn't want to use Photoshop, but wanted a tool to be able to sort through their images and be able to correct color, density, contrast, those kind of things. And I mean, that's where Lightroom came from, really.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees.
I know, but it was interesting because I don't think all the photographers, because there's a lot of us that really do love and appreciate Photoshop, and we don't rely heavily on the Lightroom side of things.
Right.
And I don't drink coffee either, Morgana, but I'm allergic to it.
Well, I have a big enough cup for both of you.
So, Morgana, I've had the chance to take Morgana's course. She has a 13-week course. Is that what it is now?
Yeah.
Is it 13 weeks? And I've really, really enjoyed it because it helped me think differently. And that was one. If you look at all these people who have different courses and videos out, everybody has something unique to their product. And whether it be the way they teach, whether it be the audience that they're addressing, or the topics and or how to look at the way you do things. And I was tickled to have the chance to go through Morgana's classes. And what did you have to do? How much time and prep did you have to put in to get this course together? And who were you directing it to? Like your audience?
Yeah. So the audience for the course are people who know how to use their cameras and are looking more for how to get their brains ticking on how to come up with the ideas and how to put together a storytelling image. So there's a little bit of lighting component, but I don't talk really about f-stops or any of the technical stuff for cameras. It's really all about the creative side, and it takes you from how to actually come up with your ideas all the way through to shooting them. And I touched on some things like how to create stories that don't have any people in them, because you can very well create an image that tells a story that doesn't have anyone in it. And I created a series to show as examples in this course that I call Here But For a Moment. And if you imagine that someone's just got up and walked out of the room and then you took the photo, what can you tell about that person by what's in the room? What have they left behind?
If it was my son, an awful lot.
But I think a lot of people...
It is so refreshing. Go ahead, Morgana.
A lot of people are providing really good training both online and offline on the technical side, how to use your camera, how to use your studio lights, how to do all that setup stuff. And people learn how to use their cameras. And yes, go out and learn your camera so that you can do it in the dark if you need to. But then they get to the stage and people go, well, now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know how to use my camera, but I still don't know how to make images that look like the way I want them to look. And
You know, and
that's
it
what
was
the
so
course is all
cool.
about.
Because it transformed my mind, and it transformed my mind to look at things differently. And with each course, because there was a class, there was 13 different classes, and at the end of each course you have an assignment. And it may seem like a simple assignment, but by the end of those 13 weeks, your mind really does change. And I remember there was a definite tilt or change in my own personal work after your stuff, because I shoot a very specific way, but after your course I was looking more for a story, something deeper, and it really turned into a whole family project after that. And so that was really exciting. Now, is it your course? Now, there's your book and there's your course. And Ed read your book, and I've read some of your book. I haven't finished it all yet, and I am just dying for my moment to do that. But they're totally different, the way you approached them. Can you tell us about your book some?
Okay, so the book I called The Noise in My Head because I very much think about, sometimes I get this idea in my head that I want to get out of my head and in front of the camera so I can shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
And because there is so much going on in my crazy brain, that's kind of where the title comes from. I tried in the book to just talk about my process, how I approach things, how I work with models, how I come up with my ideas, how I put things together, as if somebody was sitting next to me asking me questions. What are you doing now? What are you doing now? Why did you do that? Whereas my course, I've gone, right, this is all about you. This is about you coming up with the ideas and you putting things together. And I'm here to guide you, absolutely. But the book is much more, hey, we're hanging out, we're being friends, and we're being social, and I'm just talking to you. Whereas the course is, right, time to get off your butt and go and do some work. And I actually say in the promo to my course, this is not a course for wimps. Right. You know, if you just want to hear about what I do and just enjoy my images and feel like you're hanging out with me, go and buy my book. That's fantastic. But if you want to learn to shoot images that tell stories, you need the course and you need to do the work. And that puts a lot of people off. They're like, I don't want to do hard work. That's all too hard. In that case, thank you very much. Go and buy my book. But seriously, you know, you get out what you put in.
That's kind of exactly like the advanced course I'm taking at the Creative Photo Academy, where it goes on for a year, and we meet once a month, and it is very challenging. Nobody's there teaching you how to use your camera. It's about showing your work and coming up with a project, and just like you're saying, telling a story in which we'll have a showing at the end of the year. I also want to say that I think you got a really great niche, because as photographers as well as computer artists and creative people on that end, graphic artists, we've all talked about we've hit a level in our profession and our knowledge that we don't need to take another class on Photoshop. We don't need to take another class on portrait lighting or anything like that. It's to the point now where we want to kind of learn from the masters and study to take that level up, but there seems to be a big hole. There aren't a lot of courses or classes that, you know, in the case of like Photoshop, that you can't find anything that's just not about teaching you how to use the tools. And I appreciate the course you're talking about. I think there is a big demand and need for, once again, as you say, I'm not going to teach you how to use your camera. This isn't for wimps, and we're gonna challenge you creatively.
Yeah.
To come up with something.
Yeah, I found that also. Sorry, go on.
So I also found that with your work, what I really appreciated was, and I'm sure Ed can concur to this, was that you also have diagrams in there. It's not like you imagine to just read this book that you have to figure out. You're looking at the book and you have diagrams where the lighting is and everything, and I believe that people will appreciate that more than anything else, because a lot of people are afraid to just share the information too.
Yeah,
I mean, you
I
can
sure
find
did
different
appreciate that.
information. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people do seem to not want to share what they're doing, but I don't see the world the same way that you guys do. So that if I said, all right, well, here's an example. Recently, I issued a challenge on PixeLobby on Facebook, go and shoot a chair, but tell me a story with the chair. And the example that I gave was I wrapped a folding chair up in bandages, added some fake blood and some miniature ducks. So if I'd said to Ed or to Cindy or to Brian, go away and create me a story with a chair, I doubt that any of you would have done that. So it doesn't matter if I say, your lighting has to be here, and I want your camera here, and these are the props to use. You're still going to come up with something completely different. Plus, I'm here to help. I'm here to help you guys learn. I'm not going to go, oh, well, I can't tell you my secrets because then I'd be forced to kill you, because that's crazy. You know, the more you share,
No
you
one's
know,
going to.
share the love.
Well, that's what it's all
Well,
about.
nobody's going to produce the same thing. Go ahead, Ed.
No, I was just going to say that's what it's all about these days with the internet. Everybody's sharing. I think I've mentioned it before. You just have to weed out who are the good sharers and who are the people that are sharing a bunch of crap. That's what it too.
It's so true. Well, and that's with Morgana. You know, I really, I think if people give it a chance, your course especially, if they give you a chance, they'd see that you are able to help them mold their minds to think differently, and that's the most important thing. You're not saying this is how you do it. You're not holding their hands and saying, okay, now you place it here. You're teaching them how to mold clay, but with their own imaginations.
Absolutely. There's no wrong or right answers. It's like, well, if this is the way you see the story, it's your story, you do it.
So,
I'm not going to say that's wrong.
So Morgana, in shooting, I know some of the very theatrical, I believe your website says cinematic images that you create. Have you been on location, and have you ever run into some bizarre situations where people are coming up to you going, what the heck are you doing? I mean, with blood and things going on like that?
I've had things go wrong. For example, I had a location that I wanted to shoot at this particular bus stop because it was really old and beautiful. And when I did the location scouting a couple of weeks before the shoot, and when we arrived on the day, it was covered in graffiti. So I actually spent a lot of time afterwards editing out the graffiti. But as far as people interacting, when I'm shooting on location, I take Martin with me as my minder, and he tends to kind of, keep people out of the shot and just keep an eye on things, so I don't have to worry about having my gears on or someone, harassing us or something. So generally, people are pretty good. People would like to watch, but not necessarily interfere, unless they can see that you're definitely on a break. So I've been pretty lucky that way.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely try and make my images cinematic. I call my photography image cinematic because I wanted them to look like you've just turned on the television and there's a movie and you've paused it. That's what I try to make my images look like. But generally on location, I find people are pretty good. Maybe that's just because we're Aussies, I don't know. But no, seriously. people
you wouldn't find that in the U.S.
You guys have a funny accent.
Yeah. In the U.S., the first thing they'd ask you is, let's see your permit.
No, that depends. No, that's California. In California, you have your permit.
Yeah.
It's true. It's very true.
Here they have stopped me and said, so what movie are you shooting for? Or what magazine?
Yeah, they try to entrap you.
I've had that.
Was that?
I've had people ask me what magazine I'm shooting for. So
Make something up.
I do.
Yeah.
Image cinematic.
Exactly.
Oh, there you go.
Image cinematic. Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Obviously, this question is really tough. This is like saying which one of my children, or in your case, which one of my cats do I love better? But is there a favorite image that you've created, or Or if that's too difficult, is there one that seems to have been the most popular and has created the most buzz?
My, you will laugh at this, my personal favourite image I created is called The Butcher, and it's my husband as a serial killer. And he's wearing a suit with a lab coat over the top and then a butcher's apron holding a bloody knife, and there's all this blood in the background. But it's just one of those magical images that it just worked. The shoot worked well. I had the perfect background for it. The retouching work, it all came together. In fact, I love that image so much that I had it tattooed on my arm.
Whoa, that's commitment.
It's awesome too. It's awesome.
If anybody's watching the podcast as
that's the one.
to listening to it, this is the image.
Wow.
It's really awesome.
I don't know, Cindy, Ed, have you ever taken a photograph that you would tattoo on yourself?
Not yet.
My goal is actually to have a picture of each of my kids and my husband that I'd like each tattooed on me.
Yeah.
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 I want
Morgana
to get a
beat
picture
me
of
to
Brian
it,
and tattoo that on me.
There you go. That would be kind of strange, but it's California,
I love the image you did of the girl for the book of your cover, the cover for your book. I'm talking
Your cover.
backwards.
Very good, Cindy. Yes, cover of your book.
Cover of my book is a really interesting image because the cover of my book isn't actually a real person.
Ooh.
She's a headless
awesome.
mannequin. And that's the reason I started to shoot her from behind is because she doesn't have a head. She's actually a child's dressmaking dummy, and they're designed to hang from the ceiling. So instead of having a head, she's got a piece of wood that you then hook in and hang up. So straight away, when I wanted to shoot, I thought, well, I can't shoot her from the front because she doesn't have a face. So I'll shoot her from behind, put the wig on. She only has one arm, and that's the way she's meant to be, so that one side is you can do dressmaking for sleeveless and one with a sleeve. So it's a good example because the prop really dictated to me what I could do. I can't shoot you from the front. You've only got one arm. You have no head. I have to shoot you from behind. And the background is just created from noise in Photoshop.
Oh, cool.
But I really liked it because to me it really symbolized me trying to get the noise out of my head, which is the background,
Yes.
to create this image.
Which is here.
Here's one we prepared earlier. Thank you, Ed.
Again, for those who are just listening, there will be links to where you can go and see all this work. So, Morgana, with your friends and perhaps family, now, have they gotten to the point where they're starting to find stuff and send you props?
No. Sadly, no.
Because, I mean, the first thing that crosses my mind is finding something really obscure and odd and sending it to you like, what do you think about this?
See, and she's trying to get me to send my kids to her.
Yeah, I
I
want
keep
to tell
telling-
kids. Your kids are fabulous.
I keep telling her she needs to come to me.
My brothers actually live in the Middle East, and my dad does a lot of trips to visit them, so he quite often brings me back really cool jewellery from the Middle East. Martin is fantastic at coming home and saying, look, I found this, how can you shoot it? But no, generally I'm left to my own resources.
Because, Ed, don't you remember, or maybe Cindy, there was a television show that ran out of Discovery Channel or something about something obscura. It was like a
that little shop that sold all sorts of Addams Family stuff.
I could totally see you loving it.
My aim is to eventually live in a house full of stuff that makes me look like I live with the Addams Family. I think I've got, a good start. But, I have, everywhere you look.
Excellent.
Nice.
I have cool stuff.
Well, I wonder why you don't have more images of instruments, because the last one I saw you do with your dad, It was phenomenal. It was very, it hit me in the heart. A lot music is a big part of a lot of people's lives. I would love to see you do more with instruments, unless I just haven't seen it. What is
No,
that
I
something?
haven't shot a lot with I shot a lot with instruments in my very early days before I got into Photoshop, so none of that work is really online. And I guess I just kind of didn't think about it. I should, because we still have, I have 2 Irish harps. My husband has 3 saxophones. I have shot with my concertinas a little bit. They count as instruments. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's something that I shot a lot in the early days and then just didn't really think about. I particularly love the image I shot of my dad with his double bass because I love my dad dearly, and he's just really a very big, important part of my life. So to me personally, that's a very important portrait. But yeah, I should shoot more.
Yes. Excellent. So what is your, in your mind, what is your ultimate goal with your work? Is it to have gallery showings? Is it to sell your work? I've learned all through life, I've really enjoyed conceptual photography and fine art photography, but it's tough to make a living doing that. Is that the place you want to head with your work, or is it now more the sharing, teaching, and training?
Yeah, it's the sharing, teaching, and training. I'm currently running a mentoring program on storytelling on Google+. And for me, it's all worth it when one of my students has just had the most massive light bulb moment where he's just suddenly got something. He's like, oh my God, this makes so much sense to me now. And I'm just basically sitting here going, yay, baby! Because I know I'm a lousy dancer. To me, that's makes it worth it. I want to help as many people as I can find their own creativity. So many people go, oh yeah, but I'm just not creative like you. Yes, you are. Yeah. You just have to believe, and you just have to try it. No, right. You're not going to be just like me. You're going to be just like you. Right. And that's what I really feel like I'm here to do. And I know that sounds cliche, but I'm here to help people find their inner stories and get them out.
So now then, what is your next big step or project? What are you working on, or at least up in the old noodle here? What is the next big thing you want to tackle?
The next thing, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this or not yet, but I will. The next thing I'm looking at is co-writing a book with a friend of mine on storytelling with light. And it's the importance of, I'm well lit. What do I look like? You're now going to like me this way. What sort of story is the light giving us? Because I think that's really important too. But all I really want to do is just help more and more people find their stories. So I'm constantly looking at ways to let people know that, hey, I'm here to help you. Even if it's someone wants to, hit me up on chat and say, this isn't working, why isn't this working? I'm more than happy to sit down and go, okay, let's talk about this. Why do you feel it's not working? What do you think you need to change? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Because I think sometimes people kind of know the answer, but they haven't got the confidence to say, right, I just fix this, it'll be fine. So I really want to help mentor as many people as I can to help them get out there and tell their own stories.
Very noble cause, very noble. And, I often talk about the things that I see. Years ago I did a small little tabletop book that I sent off as Christmas gifts to family and friends that was, do you see what I see? And it was just kind of this concept that I think that as creative people like we are, we just look at things a little differently, whether we look at them, and I share a little bit of your idea of the, what would you call it, just kind of perhaps the bizarre, the macabre, the quirky, I'll go with that. I share that, and also just being able to see something to photograph that the non-creative person who just walks by doesn't even notice that there's something really amazing happening right there. There's something amazing with the lighting that's happening in this alleyway. And I think a lot of people have that ability, but people like yourself, it's to help teach them how to be able to see, and see, quite frankly, sometimes what's right in front of them.
Yeah. I read a fabulous book many years ago that had a foreword by Stephen King, and it was a beautiful book of photographs on gargoyles.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen King made the point, you obviously know the book, that if you're walking around town, look up. Nobody ever looks up. We all look straight ahead where we're going. I found gargoyles in Melbourne that I didn't even know existed because I didn't look up. So look up, look down, look everywhere. Just don't look where you're going, and get off your phone. Don't walk around texting, all right? You're going to miss so much if you do that.
Yeah. And even, you know, I did a whole series in Europe on manhole covers. Just the amazing art that goes into the different designs, the concept with manhole covers. So, yeah, it's looking around. Yeah, do you have anything?
I'm sorry. I'm just sitting here listening to you guys and really enjoying it. I feel like I should be on the other end just as a listener. But
No, that's good. That's all right. That's good. Cindy?
You know, I do. I would like to hear who are the people that you've looked to for inspiration in your life and in your art.
Other photographers that I admire would definitely be people like Richard Avedon,
Yes.
Cecil Beaton, George Hurrell from the 30s and 40s. I'm a huge film noir fan, so anything like that. John Ashton, the cinematographer from that era. So anyone that plays with light and plays with storytelling. A lot of my influences are actually cinematographic, not necessarily just photography. So I love Billy Wilder, who directed things like Double Indemnity. I love all the Humphrey Bogart movies. I love Quentin Tarantino just because he's so bam in your face.
Yeah.
Hitchcock, I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. So a lot of my influences are going to be from movies. Fritz Lang, I adore Fritz Lang. I love Metropolis. I love M. I love those kind of movies. German Expressionism, another huge influence because it's all lights and shadows and it doesn't necessarily make sense, but nobody seems to care.
Yeah.
So people in my life, Martin was the person that put a camera in my hand. And Martin was the person that I went to and I said, what does this button do? This isn't working. I don't know what I've done. Help me. And Martin was hugely inspirational because he would just say, you can do this. Just go and do it, you know. And he never said, that's a crappy photo. He never, ever gave me criticism. He was always encouraging, you know. I could always find something good about the images that I was taking. And he was willing to stand there night after night after night. I shot him and shot him and shot him and shot him and shot him. So he's always been really inspirational. But there's so many great people on Facebook like you guys. PixeLobby is such an important environment because it's so supportive. Nobody's sitting there going, well, that's crap, you got the lighting right. No, everybody is saying, go for it. Try it again. Do it. Look at this resource. How can we help you?
That's other groups.
I find that the positive influence is very important in a person's work because, you know, like you said, you have Martin and I have Nathan who has supported me, and I've seen the opposite with different artists where they're trying and people are bashing them and how it tears them apart. But if they just need one person there to support them, and that's what's really been great about you as an artist is that you're always supportive of anybody regardless of their art. You're a very supportive, positive influence. You know, you do have Martin, but you as an artist are the Martin to a lot of other people, and I think that's really wonderful about you and your work.
Life is way too short to be a troll. I mean, you know, if you can't say something nice. But it's true, you know.
It is.
If you surround yourself, they say you are the accumulation of the 5 people closest to you. So make those 5 people count. And that's what I try and do.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. On those artists you mentioned, again, somebody that came across my mind that you might enjoy, Diane Arbus.
Yes.
Again, thinking about your work and the stuff she does. I truly enjoy her work, and We've talked about it often in private chats as well as in PixeLobby about how I don't know if some of the new, what do we call it, new age photographers or whatever, have studied some of the greats like that and have looked at some of the historically amazing images and stories that have been told. And
I think it's really important to look at what's come before us and say, okay, I'm not necessarily a big fan of, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but you know, just because she doesn't like their work, it doesn't mean you can't learn something from them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Well, unless Morgana, unless you have something that we may have missed, tell us. We'll kind of wrap up the show here. Do you have anything?
I just kind of basically want to say to the people out there in podcast land that, you know, if you have something that you want to try, you have an image that you want to shoot, but you don't think you have the right gear, or you don't know the right people, or you don't have the right props, or whatever. You know, there used to be a saying my family used to say to me, you know, if you can't eat the elephant's toe. All right, so break it down. You know, you can't shoot. Like, I remember being in Canada on holidays, and there were these amazing vistas, and I thought there is no way I can capture how amazing this landscape is. What can I capture? So if you can't shoot the fall of the Roman Empire, shoot the Roman slave in the corner against the wall crying. You can still take a little bit of the story that you want to tell and capture it in some way. And it might not be exactly what you're after, but start. Do something. Start today. Do something. Because if you don't do it today, you probably won't do it tomorrow, and it'll never happen. So do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Very inspirational.
Totally.
Cindy, you have anything to say as we close out here?
I just think that everybody that has the opportunity to either pick up Morgana's book or if you're not going to pick up the book, try out her courses. You will walk away with something. You will always walk away with something, and it'll be something positive. And you may not notice it at once, but if you put an effort into it, you will notice it will have a big influence on how you see things.
Ed?
Yeah, I would like to reiterate exactly what Cindy said, and then if you're not going to buy the book or take the course, at least follow her and see what she's doing, and then you'll want to buy the book or take the course.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. Well, Morgana, I want to thank you so much for taking your time early in the morning for you and having this interview with us and spending time with the PixeLobby podcast and helping our audience, our listening audience, to understand a little bit more about you and your work. Again, it's incredibly creative, incredibly just, once again, she's using her eyes, her mind, she's thinking, and she's creating these stories. It's pretty spectacular. Again, I want to remind our audience that links will be on the plpodcast.com website for anybody who goes there. The show, if you subscribe on iTunes, these shows, as they become available, will automatically post to you, and you have the choice of settings, whether you want to download the 5 latest shows or whether you just want to download it when you listen to it. But one of the conveniences of a podcast is you can listen to it almost anywhere, anytime you want that you choose. And I want to thank, once again, our listening audience for listening, tuning in, and subscribing to our show. And as Morgana says, just do it and take a picture. It'll last longer.